They're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News,
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
I'm Ray Addison in the GB Newsroom. Free Speech Nation is coming right up, but first the latest headlines. And our top story. The Met Police says it's aware of new footage showing Conservative staff partying during lockdown and joking about COVID restrictions and is considering it. Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, has apologised, describing the behaviour as unacceptable. In the footage obtained by the Mirror, Tory staff can be seen ignoring social distancing rules imposed by the government at the height of the pandemic. 2 of the 24 people at that Christmas party were later named in Boris Johnson's resignation honours list. Mr Gove told us disciplinary action has already been taken.
The reason why those steps were taken was to reduce the spread of the disease, in order to make sure that the pressures on the NHS were manageable, in order to make sure that we could treat people who were very ill. So, again, the actions here are deeply distressing, and I can only apologise to people that individuals behaved in this way. My understanding is that there was an investigation into the party when the photograph emerged, and people were disciplined.
Well, MPs will debate any possible punishment for Boris Johnson tomorrow after he was found to have misled Parliament over Partygate. The Privileges Committee recommended that the former Prime Minister should face a 90-day suspension had he not already resigned in advance of that judgment. Now, it's understood that his supporters are being encouraged to abstain, but former Brexit Secretary David Davis told Camilla Tominey he will support the committee.
One of the things about Parliament is it's the highest court in the land.
Yeah.
That creates a problem when you're coming to privileges. What's that problem? It's like having a trial in a village. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
Nobody is entirely unbiased.
How do they know his own mind at the time?
They don't have to. What they know is what he knows.
Yeah.
If you go to a party, you know it was a party. You don't need an advisor to tell you.
The death toll caused by flooding following the destruction of Ukraine's Kakhovka Dam has now risen to 45, with Moscow reporting 29 fatalities in Russian-held areas. The breaching of the dam in early June unleashed floodwaters across southern Ukraine, including areas occupied by Russian forces. It's destroyed land and cut off access to supplies. Kyiv says more than 3,600 people have been evacuated, while 31 are still missing. On TV, online, on DAB+ radio and on TuneIn 2, this is GB News. Back now to Free Speech Nation.
Tory staffers dance very poorly. Authors cancel their own books and Starbucks pay out millions after sacking someone for being white. This is Free Speech Nation. Hello, welcome to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie, standing in for Andrew Doyle. This is a show where we take a look at culture, current affairs and politics. And of course, we'll have the latest from those lovable culture warriors. How civilization survived for thousands of years before their very welcome intervention remains a mystery. Coming up on tonight's show, we have Lewis Oakley, co-host of the Bisexual Brunch podcast. That's a mouthful. We'll be here to discuss a report that suggests Britain is becoming more sexually fluid. Journalist Laura Dodsworth will join us and we'll ask her why Elizabeth Gilbert, the author, felt compelled to not to publish her latest book just because it's set in Russia. Brilliant journalist and campaigner Michael Schellenberger will talk us about a free speech event he's involved in next week with Russell Brand, amongst others. And of course, myself, my fantastic panel, will be answering questions from our wonderful studio audience. All that and much, much more tonight on Free Speech Nation. And there's no clap there. I thought there was. I made a mistake. What can I say? Yes, yay! We throw it down there. Wonderful. Let's just say that when I go up at the end of a sentence, it's time for an applause. Okay.
That's normally how you approach your comedy, isn't it?
That's exactly it. You don't actually need to worry about the jokes, just go up at the end of the sentence. Anyway, my studio guests this evening are Cressida Wetton and Francis Foster! It works every time. How are you guys doing, Francis? Lovely to see that you're dressing up here.
Thank you.
It would be nice if you'd made an effort. But anyway, sorry, you could have got your tats out like Francis has got here, improving his masculinity there. You look very nice. How are you doing, Cressida? You had a nice day?
I'm having a lovely day. Finally, we've got some rain. That's exciting, isn't it? After all this relentless sun.
Was Addams Family your favourite film growing up?
No.
No, OK, fine. Thank you very much. And you've been away, haven't you?
Yes, I was in Oslo at the Freedom Forum. It was good.
Thank you for telling us so much about that, Francis.
Yeah, it sounds a bit right-wing, doesn't it?
It sounds like the most Francis Foster event.
Yeah. Nice to see you. Let's see more of those tattoos under there. No, maybe not. First of all, as tradition dictates, let's get some questions from the audience. Our first question's from Daryl.
Hello, everybody. So, why do the Tories only seem to hire terrible dancers?
Yeah, there are three certainties in life: death, taxes and revelations about Tories partying during lockdown. Housing Secretary Michael Gove has been forced to apologise after the Mirror released footage last night showing Tory activists dancing at a party in Christmas 2020 while the nation was in lockdown. The Conservatives say 4 people have been disciplined for the event, though probably not for the quality of the dancing. Wow, what do you think about that?
I mean, the dancing for me was the worst part of it. It was absolutely despicable.
Look how angry these people are.
Yeah.
They don't care about COVID and lockdowns.
No! At one point, they nearly went into the... Look at it! Look at it! Listen, if she went home with him afterwards, and I'm saying she's got no standards and she deserves to be excommunicated from politics, absolutely vile.
I don't know, for me, though, it's the braces.
Yeah.
That is the truly unforgivable thing.
I want to know what music is playing at this point.
That's the sad thing, they're not even... There's no music. That's what Tories are like when they get together.
It
was it?
That's far too...
Yeah, and I bet it was a version with the problematic bits kept in.
What's lovely is that this is when they first hooked up. They've now got a 2-year-old.
Yeah, it was consummated that night.
Yeah. Does this make you angry, Cressida?
It does make me angry, but it also makes me laugh, which is a strange emotion, isn't it, to be angry and laughing at the same time? You're a parent, it probably happens to you all the time, I don't know. It reminds me of... Well, we keep seeing clips of Boris Johnson jogging at the moment, don't we? And he's not very...
He jogs like they dance.
Exactly,
He's just like...
exactly. Yeah, very much. But of course it makes me angry. I mean, it's almost as though they didn't think it was as dangerous as they were telling us it was.
That's crazy talk.
Well...
Yeah. But the question is now, I guess, is... first of all, because when the police already investigated this and they didn't give out, I believe, any fines or whatever, now we have actual footage. Are they going to reopen the investigation? And I believe 2 of the people on the video are also up for honours, so there are questions...
Services to lockdown.
Well, that's the argument. But I guess, do you think that too much time has passed? Do you think that people are really going to see this through this time, or is it that people want to move on now?
I think that, look, there's a lot of people who are still incredibly angry about this. You have to remember that people couldn't go to funerals, people couldn't go and see loved ones. There were people who couldn't actually go and see relatives who were in care homes, who then subsequently passed away as a result of being on their own and being completely isolated. Then something needs to happen, because there is still a lot of rancour. There are people who want to move on, but I think the people who lost loved ones or saw friends or family deteriorate as a result of lockdowns want some kind of justice, and they deserve it, to be quite honest.
Absolutely, but it would also be nice if our government would get on with actually doing some stuff. Our next question is from Mina.
Good evening. Did you pay your mortgage this month, or did you need to feed the family?
I'm here. So, Tory MPs are sounding the alarm bells over their prospects in the general election next year as homeowners find their mortgages spiralling out of control. Economists think interest rates will rise again this week, and Tory MP for Telford, Lucy Allen, said, "People telling me their monthly mortgage payment is exceeding their salary. That is unsustainable." Now, Cressida, you live on a boat.
I know where this is going.
Yeah.
I do, so I don't have a mortgage. I mean, I did.
Or a garden.
London is my garden, Josh.
Yeah.
What was the question? Have I paid my mortgage? I don't have a mortgage. I'm thinking about getting one. It's not looking
Not
good.
anymore.
It's so... Yeah, exactly. Yeah. It's not looking good. Yeah, are you a homeowner, Francis?
Of course I'm not. No, look at me. Do I look like a homeowner? Absolutely not. I live in a small rented flat, which I share with 2 cats, and the cats have a better standard of living than I do. So, no, I don't have a mortgage, but the reality is I really admire this government, because what they try and do is every month they try and make it worse for people. And they're nailing it. Every month they're just coming out with something new, which is just crippling us. Good on them.
But whether this is the straw that broke the country's back...
I mean, that happened probably about 6 months ago,
There's been a lot of straws.
No, yeah. I feel like this might be the log that did it. But I've even heard that there are some Tory MPs actually asking for an election now because the damage would be so much greater in another year's time. That's the idea. Anyway, do you think there's any chance of that happening?
No. I think Sunak is going to try and put it off as long as humanly possible, in the vague and very, very distant hope that he's going to actually be able to turn this mess around, which, of course, he can't and he won't. Sunak's going to... and Starmer's going to storm in to power without having any policies.
I will see about that. All I'm going to say is 5-year fixed. Anyway, our next question is from Jackie.
Hi. Do we need to stop listening to Take That songs now?
Never. How dare you? Nottingham Pride has dropped Take That's Howard Donald from a festival in July after he liked several transphobic and homophobic tweets. Donald's Twitter account has now been deleted after fans criticised his online behaviour. An apologetic Donald said, "I am really disappointed in myself and I am sorry for any hurt that I've caused by my uneducated actions. I clearly have a lot to learn and it's a priority for me to do blah, 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 blah." First of all, let's one of those tweets, I believe one of those homophobic tweets was the disgusting like that only women can have periods.
Yes. That's what he's apologising for. I don't think he should be apologising. It's not going to go away, is it? If you stand your ground...
period?
Well, after a week or so.
I'm very disappointed in him. He needs to apologise to me now for apologising. Howard, you know, this was the first record I ever bought was Take That, and now I'm just distraught.
Vinyl, right? There is an argument. Some people would say that this is a free speech issue. I don't think it actually is a free speech issue. The festival in Nottingham Pride, they have the option to, to basically pull the booking of someone who doesn't ally with their beliefs, right?
Yeah.
Even if those beliefs are wrong.
Yeah. And look, how terrible is your Pride event that you don't book Gary Barlow, you don't book Robbie Williams, you don't even book Mark, or whatever his surname is. No one knows Mark's surname.
I love how you're pretending you don't know his name.
Right, you book Howard Donald.
So you think that's enough for them to be closed down?
I think you're right, though. Howard should take this as an opportunity to ditch the event. Like, who's cancelling who here?
I think it's the opportunity for him to become a massive turf and just go out with Kelly J. Keane on marches.
I think that might be the next step, don't you?
Well, Nottingham Pride, I am available. Our next question's from Olivia.
Hi. Are Oxfam donations needed to pay for a new CEO?
Yes, Oxfam chief Danny Shrikandaraja has announced that he is leaving the charity in the wake of a row over a cartoon which some critics suggested was a depiction of J.K. Rowling. The charity released a Pride video which included a woman wearing a turf badge who looked somewhat like Rowling. The cartoon has been withdrawn, although the charity dismissed the notion that characters were based on real-life people because she's got loads of money and she can sue. You saw the cartoon, you see the image, do you think it was based on her?
Absolutely. I think...
Oh, look, there it is, there. Who's who?
I say absolutely. No offence, JK. I'm not trying to be rude, but yes, I do think it was based on her.
Yes, and do you think that he's resigning because of this, or do you think it's
I should think so, although this isn't their first bit of trouble, is it? I mean, I don't know, was he CEO during the other...
I think he came in 2019, but yes, Oxfam has had issues with their AIDS workers hiring sex workers or in Haiti and other places, parties and whatnot. Not what you would expect from a charity that's meant to be going out there and doing good. Do you think that this is part of the reason why he might have left, or do you think it's damaged the Oxfam brand a lot?
I mean, look, the thing is, with all of these charities, you think to themselves, what are you doing? What aid charity thinks to themselves, do you know what I'm going to do now? Let's get into the culture war. Let's do that. That's really going to bring people...
You're in the right place.
Yeah, but that's really going to bring people on board. Let's attack a beloved children's author. It's absolute nonsense. Yeah. And, and you were actually criticising them about, the sex worker stuff. Maybe they were just putting money into the community. Have a think about that.
OK, maybe you could go and be a sex worker in Haiti and see how that works out.
I can identify as whatever I want, mate.
OK, fine. Do you think that Oxfam really has any business getting involved in the turf wars as such?
I don't.
I mean, that's not really what their remit is.
No, and this happens all the time, doesn't it? Because they're a good thing, we sort of... Although it happens with other brands as well, doesn't it? Supermarkets and Lockheed Martin recently have been getting involved as well. So it's like everybody wants to... But no, it's not in their remit. Just stick to raising money and making the world a better place, please.
Yes, and we also saw, and as you said, we had Wix this week, the COO also coming out on the transition, basically calling his customers bigots if they think that there's only men and women.
Yeah, it's an unnecessary conversation, isn't it? We can all...
When you think about who are the people who shop at Wix regularly, I think they're going to be pretty gender critical. Do you know what I mean? Van drivers, I imagine, aren't really the most progressive of a bunch when it comes to the gender issue.
I'm visualising someone in a Fred Perry shirt with tattoos on both arms.
Yeah. Anyway. Look who looks a little bit like a lesbian, absolutely.
All right, our next question's from Gordon. Hey, Gordon.
Hi, good evening. Do P.G. Wodehouse novels need trigger warnings?
Yeah, the Telegraph reports that publishers have decided to give P.G. Wodehouse's work a blanket trigger warning due to the belief it contains outdated social attitudes. Readers of any new editions will be greeted by a cautionary note that says, please be aware that this book was published in the 1920s and may contain language, themes or characterizations which you may find outdated. Wodehouse is best known for the Jeeves and Worcester books, which have been edited to remove or alter racial terminology. My understanding, though, is that within these books, Francis, there were no racial words or anything. This is just... What exactly are they giving a trigger warning for?
Well, what they're actually doing is trying to protect themselves at all costs from the fact that somebody somewhere might get a little bit upset about something and then start a hashtag which would about 5 people would get involved. And then because the entire publishing industry, like all liberal arts industries, are so pathetically weak, they will then crumble, apologise and then ban all books.
And that's what really.
Yeah,
Cresta, it seems to be moving sort of further back in time. These trigger warnings. Are we going to be getting the sort of Iliad? Are we going to get that far back?
No, I thought we were making some ground here because they haven't actually altered the text, have they?
I see.
They've just given it a warning, which is a bit of a move forward from people going in with a red pen and deciding they know better. I mean, can you imagine if this stuff actually got altered by somebody now? It wouldn't be P.G. Wodehouse at all. So I think that's a positive, no?
Do you remember when we used to stay up and just watch horror movies?
No,
I was staying up. I was reading P.G. Wodehouse.
But yeah,
my God, this is shocking stuff. I wish someone had trigger warned me.
But it's so ridiculous. I remember as a kid, like my mate's elder brother showing me Hellraiser 3 and all these gratuitous horror movies and action movies. And now we've got trigger warnings on P.J. Wodehouse.
Hasn't done you any harm at all, has it?
Yeah,
Absolutely.
exactly.
Well
I'm not
adjusted.
angry in the slightest, or an insomniac. Anyway, moving on.
Right, our final question for the moment is from Paul.
Hi.
Paul, hi.
Do you deserve £25 million?
Yes.
If you are... Do you deserve £25 million if you are sacked for being white?
Well, this is a former Starbucks manager. She was awarded $25.6 million, that's still a lot of money, by a federal jury in New Jersey earlier this week, after they found that she had been fired for being white. Shannon Phillips claims she was made a scapegoat by the company when police were called to a branch of the coffee shop and 2 black men led away, even though they had not committed any crime. The incident prompted a major backlash against Starbucks, which shut many of its branches one day so staff could receive racial bias training. So do you remember this incident, Cresta? You remember what happened? And I believe it was 2 men, they were black, they went into the Starbucks, they said they were waiting for a friend and they wanted to use the toilet.
Yes.
And the manager or one of the staff said, look, if you're not going to buy anything, we're going to call the police. That's essentially what happened.
That's right, but it wasn't this woman, Shannon, that called the police.
No.
It was her colleague who was black and didn't get fired, so that's...
Well, I think it was actually not even her. She's the regional manager of a lot of stores, and I think it was this person's immediate supervisor who was black who actually defended Shannon at the court case to say he was the immediate supervisor, but because he's black, there was no ramifications for him. So it seemed like they are, trying to get a scapegoat, right?
Yeah, I guess so. It's an astonishing amount of money, isn't it, for somebody that worked in Starbucks?
It's a lot of tips.
How do they arrive at these figures? It's almost like they've got something to hide. They must be very worried to be looking at that kind of figure.
Well, I think the point was that she ran the whole region. So she was quite high up within the organisation.
OK, well, she's still done very well out of it, I think.
But, I mean, we are seeing this, and we've seen this in the past. Do you think we're going to see more of these kind of court cases where someone somewhere makes a mistake and then these companies panic and they have to fire somebody? I'm talking about Oxfam. No.
Yeah, I think more and more you're just going to see this because what you see with these companies is a complete inability to stand their ground or actually just go, no, we've looked into it and we realise that it was fine. Or maybe somebody made a mistake, we apologise for that, it's not that big a deal and we're all going to move on. But firing someone and them getting $25.6 million. I wish someone would do that to us, Josh.
Yeah, but...
Wouldn't you love it if someone just discriminated against you because you were white and you got fired? $25.6 million.
Do it now. Say something. Say something.
I hate you white people. Just doesn't have the same ring to it, does it?
The 2 non-customers got some money as well, didn't they?
Did they?
2 gentlemen
No, I think they got
arrested.
4 stamps on the card. But it is a serious thing. We are seeing these companies panicking, acting in haste because they want to, like anybody, no one wants to be called out as being racist, acting in haste, and then, of course, being racist themselves, and this is them being held to account.
Absolutely, yeah. And I don't know how many people make these decisions either. And was it one person that's had a bit of a heavy weekend and on a Monday they just say, "Oh, just write them a cheque for 25 million"? Or is it discussed in meetings? I don't know how they arrive at this.
It's a lot of paninis that they've sold there. Anyway, still to come on Free Speech Nation. Is Britain becoming a more sexually fluid nation? Lewis Oakley from the Bisexual Brunch podcast will be here to tell us more. See you shortly.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, "Alexa, play GB News." We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. Is Britain becoming a more sexually fluid country? Lancashire University researchers have produced a report which suggests that around 1 in 15 Brits have changed their sexual orientation in the past 6 years. And while conventional wisdom holds that sexual fluidity is generally the preserve of younger people, the new data, taken from a sample of almost 23,000 people, shows that women over 65 are one of the groups most likely to switch. Here to discuss this, I'm delighted to welcome the co-host of the Bisexual Brunch podcast, Lewis Oakley.
Hello. Thank you.
So, Lewis, were you shocked by this poll? Did you sort of have any inclination of what was going to come out within it?
Not really. I hear this kind of stuff a lot. Of obviously, you know, people are changing the way that they identify a lot, and especially that older category. I think we don't talk about it enough. But yeah, I actually see it a lot of the time in the work I do.
And isn't it also, from my understanding of reading the article, that it's not just people supposedly coming out of the closet, it's also people who are gay or bi, going straight.
Yeah. So there's a lot to unpack, really. So I started an advice column simply because I would do stuff like this, right? I would go on TV or write articles, and so many people would write in to me. And so I was like, I'll turn this into an advice column. But one of the main questions I have a lot from different people is about coming out as you get older. And I think you've got to think the world has changed. So that obviously with this study, it was the 65 pluses, right? So that's you know, they're rivaling the 24-year-olds now. They grew up in a different world, right? So if you grew up, and I can obviously speak about the bisexual experience most, but if you grew up in a world where it was illegal, and then highly frowned upon, you probably did hide it. And now you've woken up in 2023, and actually it's okay. You're not going to be chased out of polite society anymore. So I think that there are these people that are getting older, and they're saying, well, actually, you know what? Why do I have to deal with this? And I think that for a lot of people, especially in relationships that kind of, you know, will email me and that they may be married, they kind of say, you know what? I've lived with this. I knew that I was bisexual, whatever it was, all of my life. And I've kind of played this straight character for my wife. And actually, I don't want to die with this secret, and I want to tell her. It's not that I want to go off and have affairs with men or whatever it is. I just want to say to her, you know what, I've put up with a load of your stuff over the years. I want to tell you something. This is it. Not leaving you. I'm just going to let you know, because I'm not playing this straight character anymore.
Was it P. Schofield who emailed?
No, let's not get into that one.
But, I mean, with your argument, and I agree with you, it seems that in many ways this is a very positive poll, because if it is the acceptability and people feel like they're safe to now come out in a different sexuality, to have this fluidity. Surely that's an indicator that society is more accepting.
Yeah, I mean, things have gotten better, there's no doubt. Things are not perfect, but things have gotten a lot better. Obviously, I still think things could get a lot better for bisexual people. But, yeah, I think that things have gotten better. People are seeing it more right now, so they're seeing it in their real lives. They're seeing, you know, Sally at number 43 just came out, and she, you know, no one went to her house with stones to go get her. But also you're seeing celebrities, you're seeing, you know, on TV shows that actually people are able to kind of come out, and it's okay. It's not perfect. There's still a lot of issues. For the bisexual people, you know, there is a lot going on there. We kind of do worse every way you measure success, whether that's, you know, health, mental health, wages, coming out with, you know, particularly one of the most closeted of the demographics. But it is better.
It is better. So do you think that a lot of these people are, by definition, bisexual, in that they are changing the way the fluidity is working?
No, well, the interesting thing about this study was it was every which way, you know. So there were some people that were kind of coming out as heterosexual. And one thing was quite interesting, I thought, was that there was a big demographic that kind of, when they ran the study 6 years ago, had said, you know, it's none of your business. I'm not going to tell you what my sexuality is. And a lot of those are now saying, well, you know, this is what it is. So, and a lot of those are coming out as straight, if you can say coming out as straight, but coming out to these researchers as straight, which is kind of showing that even though that's not an LGBT thing, it is showing that sexuality and your attractions are becoming more central to people's identity.
Yeah, so, I mean, do you think that in the future, as the acceptability has led to more people coming out and going, oh, and now I want to reveal something about myself, with the younger people being raised in that world, do you think that that would actually change then, that those people would have already come out?
We'll have to wait and see. I think it's an interesting one. So the young people now, they are growing up in a more accepting society. So it might be that they won't get to 65 and be like, you know what, I've had enough, I'm going to tell you all. So, you know, that might not happen this time, but, you know, time will tell.
And it also seems to be, my understanding is, it's more women who seem to be more fluid.
Yeah, well, certainly more women that are willing to sort of admit it. So I deal with a lot with the bisexual side, right? And as someone kind of put it to me once, they said, like, Lewis, look, we know from statistics a lot of women don't want to date bisexual men, right? So factor in all the women that already don't want to date me, and then reduce that again, because there's so many women that won't date bi men. So isn't coming out as bi just basically coming out as gay by default? There is an issue there, and I always get into a lot of trouble talking about it, because you don't want to seem like you're criticizing women, but at the same time, there are a lot of bi people that kind of will stay in the closet. They're the most closeted of all, especially bi men, are the most closeted of all the kind of demographics, because they know that if they come out, there is a huge section of the people they're attracted to, women, that will say, no, I'm not interested. And so how do we kind of tackle that? You know, I'm not here to judge anyone, so if you're a woman and you're not attracted to a bi man, that's up to you. But I would say there's a difference between saying, oh, you know, I just don't feel it. Whatever that special feeling is, I just don't feel it for bi men. And there is the other side that's saying, well, I don't believe bisexuality is a thing. I think you're gay. I think that, you're a disease carrier. That's discrimination. So I think it's just about having these conversations. There'll be some really hot, hunky bisexual celebrities eventually that might change people's minds. I don't know. So that stuff will change. But it does have an impact on why men are less willing to be open about it.
I mean, I've also had a lot of women unwilling to go out with me. Might be because I've been married for 20 years, and happily so. I'm joking, I don't want it. But do you think the government needs to do more to ensure that sexual minorities are feeling supported?
Would you trust the government to touch anything? I think we might be better off without them trying to interfere, looking at how they handle everything else. Look, I think it's about being smart with it, right? So I read a story on the way in about, there's a new zebra crossing, a rainbow zebra crossing. They put in £50,000 somehow they've spent on it. That wasn't a good idea. You know what I mean? I'll come and do that for you for £500. I think there is money and resource to be spent, but it's about in the right way. So, and I'm a big advocate of, we can help ourselves a lot of the time. So with the stuff I do, we do the podcast, we do the advice column, because, a lot of, in the world I'm in, the bisexual world, it's like, actually, we can help each other. Like, I can kind of share my experience with you, and that's it. Where we kind of struggle on that kind of where the government could come in is with a bit of funding. Bisexuality is famously under-researched. It's not really served by the LGBT community, and anyone that's got a problem with me saying that can read the Funders for LGBTQ Issues report.
Yeah!
We're completely not funded. We get about 1% of LGBT funding, despite being the biggest demographic.
It's the B. It's the B.
It's the B.
The LGB.
Yeah, so, there is some funding issues there. So that if the government is smart with it and put it where it needs to go, not on kind of things where it's like, oh, look, we painted a bench a rainbow. That's not helped me in any way. You know what I mean?
Yeah, if the government's smart, that's a big if. Anyway, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Big round of applause, please. Still to come tonight, Laura Dosworth on her fellow author Elizabeth Gilbert's decision not to publish her new book because it's set in Russia. Eat, pray. See you in a few minutes.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard.
We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often there will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics, and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions, and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio, and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real, robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Welcome back. Later in the show, I'll be turning agony uncle with the help of my panel. We have Cresta Wetton and Francis Foster to help you deal with your unfiltered dilemmas. Email us at gbviews@gbnews.com and we'll try to answer your issues. Best-selling author Elizabeth Gilbert has decided not to publish her new novel after attracting criticism because it is set in Russia. The author of the huge hit Eat, Pray, Love was poised to publish a historical novel based on the true story of the Lykov family who spent more than 40 years living an incredibly isolated existence in Siberia. However, Gilbert has decided not to publish the book after all due to the negative reaction it garnered from her fans in Ukraine, some of whom were unhappy about the depiction of the country which has invaded their own. Laura Dodsworth, author of upcoming book Free Your Mind, has written a fascinating article about this, and she joins me now. Welcome. So, first of all, why has Elizabeth Gilbert taken this path?
Well, it depends if you want to take what she has said at face value or maybe read a bit more into it. So she's released a video on social media, and as of this afternoon, that's been watched 7.5 million times on Twitter, and, you know, it's across her socials, saying that when she announced that she was publishing The Snow Forest, she received an outpouring of negative emotion from Ukrainian readers, and she's decided to listen to them, hear them, and withdraw the book indefinitely. Now, what actually happened was she got hundreds of negative reviews left on Goodreads. As all authors know, Goodreads is an important source of reviews and ultimately leads to books. So, you know, is she listening to the sensitivities of Ukrainian readers, or is she maybe pandering to the sensibilities of Western liberals and thinking about the bottom line?
Aha, how very cynical of you. But if it was that she was doing it because of criticism from Ukrainian readers, and I'm sure they've got a lot more to be focusing on at the moment, surely it's now backfired because she's received a lot more criticism from people saying that this is self-censorship.
Yeah, she has received a huge amount of negative reactions from having withdrawn the book. And I think really rightly so, because literature should be defended at all times, including wartime. The really strange thing about her decision to withdraw this book is it wasn't a manifesto for Putin. You know, it didn't condone Russia's war in Ukraine. She hadn't pledged her profits to Putin. It's basically a fictional book based on a real family who actually chose to escape Russian society to live apart from the Russian regime. And if we take this kind of decision to its illogical end, you know, where does it go? Do we have to stop reading or buying books set in Russia in the future, or books written in the past? Where does it leave Dostoevsky, Chekhov and Tolstoy?
Right, I'm not Andrew Doyle, so I don't know who those people are.
What about, OK, there's a fantastic book, I know you're joking, The Gulag Archipelago, written by Alexander Solzhenitsyn. You know, that's set in Russia. Are we allowed to read that? So she's making a decision which sounds like it's based on feelings, but it's really intellectually unsound. Because if you take it to the conclusion, she's basically saying that books are dangerous. Books aren't dangerous. Books are the bastion of liberty, which means that writers have a responsibility to be artistically true as well as intellectually courageous. And I think the reason that this has provoked a big backlash is it feels like it's cowardly.
So you think it is setting a very dangerous precedent, I guess, to other authors?
I do. I think it sets a really dangerous precedent, although precedent's not really the right word, because we're well into the long trend of the sensitivity readers. The first thing to note is not one single Ukrainian will be saved. She won't make any difference to the course of the war in Ukraine. It's a completely futile gesture. And whereas she's known as the author of Eat, Pray, Love, which probably made her millions, you know, is she not rich enough? She's probably going to be known now as right, pander, self-censor. You know, the options for this are endless.
And you think...
I think the thing is, although, you know, this isn't a precedent because you were talking about P.G. Wodehouse earlier. Just recently, the sensitivity readers completely vandalised Roald Dahl's texts. References to fat kids were removed, which will make no real-life difference to the body mass index of any children. Terry Jones, Monty Python creator, famously said they could never get away with making The Life of Brian now. Andrew Lloyd Webber was in the news this week for saying he wanted to produce a new musical, but it wasn't set in this country, and he was told he can't produce a musical set in another country. Back in 2018, the fantastic author Lionel Shriver was warning about sensitivity readers and cultural appropriation. And she said that fiction would become homogenous, dreary and timid. Well, we're there. We're constantly reducing the limits of what's acceptable, but not only acceptable, we're reducing our own horizons of what's exciting and what's possible.
And do you think that there is a way out here? I mean, is it the authors need to get a backbone? Is it the publishing houses need to let the authors just be authors? How are we going to get out of this?
I think it's all of us. You know, we all need to show courage, and that does include the writer. Now, I don't have Elizabeth Gilbert's fame or standing, but I don't think I've published a book which has been without controversy, and I've survived. You know, here I am talking about authors. I think she should have ridden this out, and she would have got a lot more respect. So the way out of it is for limp-wristed authors, we need publishers to show some backbone, get rid of the sensitivity readers. They're not making books better. We don't need warnings at the beginning of P.G. Wodehouse or Nancy Mitford or Roald Dahl. What it does is really degrade the idea of the mind. It insults the intelligence of the reader. People are quite capable of reading books, consuming ideas, and coming out of it better, not weaker.
Yeah, I mean, is there an argument that she's maybe just been a little bit too protected? Because I read that what she was kind of initially saying was that it's really hard to receive criticism. And I guess if she got so much positive feedback from her first book, or from the Eat, Pray, Love, that just getting any blowback is enough. Do you think that maybe authors should be toughened up, something, go on a course? Just have people shouting at them. What they could do, of course, is come on GB News and state their opinion, and they'll get lots of lovely tweets if you try and attack Trump. Anyway,
she could start with reading George Orwell's alternative preface to Animal Farm. He talked about the renegade liberal. You know, bad regimes, bad totalitarian regimes ban books. But the problem, you know, one of the peculiar phenomena of our time is the intelligentsia voluntarily censor themselves. We're banning our own books. So she needs to step away from the path of the renegade liberal and grow some backbone.
And perhaps rewrite this book so it gets better reviews. Can you tell us quickly about your new book?
Yes, I've got a new book out in July called Free Your Mind. Basically, after A State of Fear, which was my reaction to the epiphany of lockdown, that so many of our freedoms were illusory and governments wielded propaganda to make people follow the rules, I teamed up with an ex-Cambridge Analytica psychologist, very talented psychologist called Patrick Fagan. And what we want is for people to feel psychologically resilient and learn how to deflect the myriad of manipulations. You know, this is a show called Free Speech Nation, but the fact is that free speech means little without free minds. And we both believe that minds are wondrous and don't need to be protected from language in books of 50 years ago, that we need to learn how to recognise and deflect the attempts at manipulation and be sovereign of our own minds.
And do you, what quick tip could you give us how to get to that point?
Read books. Read lots of books.
And deliberately read books that will challenge you?
I think you should constantly be consuming a variety of news sources and reading books. Reading through printed material is the best way to inform your mind rather than pictures and videos. We do have chapters on screens, on TV and social media, but it's also about psychological principles. It's about learning how to recognise the ways in which you'll be manipulated, often through emotion. If you look at Elizabeth Gilbert's response, it's really dripping with emotion. She hasn't made an intellectually well thought out response to publishing a book.
So first step is to free your mind is to buy and read your book, Free Your Mind.
That's an excellent first step. I like it.
Very good. Well, thank you very much for coming in. Laura Dosler. Thank you very much. Still to come. Does being out in the garden entail a responsibility to dress reservedly? We'll meet the gardening mum who shocks her locals with her attire. Something to look forward to. See you then.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything, I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prison?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News. The People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut up?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point. But
And action.
Sergeant, we're being read by superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation with me, Josh Howie. What do you wear while doing the gardening? That may seem like a mundane question, but in the village of Burchanger, Essex, it's become a topic of heated debate. Married mum Lucy Nicola likes to don some fairly racy outfits when she grabs the garden shears. But while that may delight her many fans on social media, other villagers are less impressed. Should we continue to look like scruffs when we head out to mow the lawn, or is it time to glam up our gardening? Here to help answer that is Lucy Nicola herself. Good evening, Lucy. If I may be so bold, you're looking particularly glamorous this evening.
Thank
Is
you.
this one of your shearing outfits?
I have been known to wear this in the garden, yes.
Wow, and not get any grass stains on it?
I do wear my wellies.
Oh, you do wear so
my
the wellies
Yeah,
with
the shoes are a no-go, but I do wear my wellies.
Okay.
But for me, gardening and to be glam in the garden is something I'm really passionate about. I love to own the garden, feel sexy and feel glamorous.
Fair enough. And I mean, is this gardening, is it a private garden? I mean, I can't imagine why people are upset about it.
Yeah, my own garden, and it is on a main road, so people will drive past.
So is it all the car crashes that cause the problem?
I do get a lot of people just slowing down.
Oh yeah, here we go. There's an image of you there. And you are sort of, I don't know, camouflaged, really.
I'm blending in. You
are blending in there. I'm surprised that people would even notice. Well, we've got some more images. Oh, there we go. Hello, bottom. So, this is you. And are you in your heels there?
No, I don't do heels. I don't do heels when gardening.
No, that would not be practical.
No, I would get stuck in the grass and it just wouldn't happen. So,
fair enough.
Flip-flops, yes, and my wellies. I do rock the wellies. I love the wellies. I feel sexy in wellies. But I just feel gardening, why can't it be glam? I think it's more associated with the older generation, and people will go out in old clothes, but I don't feel that's me. I like to feel great, I like to feel comfortable, I like to feel sexy. After all, I'm planting beauty. That's what I'm doing in the garden. I'm planting beauty. People will stop to have a look at beautiful flowers, so why can't I feel as beautiful as my flowers?
That's a good idea.
That's my philosophy.
That's a very good philosophy. I mean, do you think in some ways that being dressed up might even help the flowers to perform? They're like, she's made an effort. I better bloom here.
I actually feel I'm in competition with these flowers, because my flowers, my hanging baskets are literally beaming, absolutely beautiful. I need to look as good as these plants.
Very good.
And that is.
But you're not like a sort of evil witch where if they look better than you, you'll be like, you'll destroy them.
Oh, it's a bit of competition, but no, it's just, yeah, they're my little babies and I love them and I talk to them. I love my plants, love my flowers, and so passionate about gardening.
Fair enough, but there has been some pushback in your village, I understand, all right?
I live in a small...
name and shame right now?
I live in a small village, and you know, a lot of the villagers absolutely love it. They compliment me all the time, which is great. But you will get people that go, "What on earth is she wearing? Why does she feel the need to dress like that when she's in the garden?" I do stride up and down with my lawnmower like I'm on a catwalk because I feel great and I want to do that. And yeah, I just don't think I get the approval. Not of everybody. As I said, lots of people do compliment me all the time. They will just say, "Lucy, you are so glamorous," and I love it. I love that compliment. I think that's a lovely compliment to have.
Would you prefer to receive a compliment for your outfit or for your flowers?
Both.
Oh, really? So if someone came along and said, "Hey, that's a nice outfit," you'll be like, "Excuse me, have you seen these roses?"
No, I mean, you know, the flowers are the compliments all the time, but... Oh, no, do you know what? Both.
It's got to be both. You're a very highly demanding person.
Yeah, I think it's just nice to be complimented.
Well, the first thing, you've inspired me, because what I'm going to do now is I'm going to earn a lot more money and buy a place with a garden. And then I will be able to dress up nicely.
I mean, obviously, I know a lot of people haven't got gardens, but I think trying to create that image of, you know, there's so many things you can do to bring nature into your place, if you live in a flat, you can do window boxes, you can do hanging baskets, you can bring plants in. There's so much beauty you can create. You don't need to have a garden. I love just look at people's places and think, "Oh God, that would look nice there," or "That would look nice there." I'm just so passionate about it. I just want to glam Britain up and just make it all look lovely.
There's nothing wrong with that.
And just promote gardening it's cool. Gardening is cool. It's not a boring thing. You shouldn't shy away from a passion. Because I've taken up gardening when I was in my 20s, and I feel that I sort of shied away. If I was like, I'm out doing my gardening, and I felt almost a bit embarrassed to admit that I was a keen gardener at 20. And I just want to say, for the younger generation, that gardening is great. It just works amazing, you know, does amazing things for your mental health. It's great exercise, and it's just a great thing to get into.
And then when you've finished with a day of gardening, what do? You go into the conservatory and then you put on your jeans and T-shirt?
No, when I finish doing my gardening, I will just sit and admire the hard work that I've put into the gardening, and that is just an amazing part. But then I'll sort of strip down, maybe if it's hot, into maybe my bikini, or... Yeah, I'm doing like my bikini.
And I want to ask one question. I hope this isn't too personal, but whether you're a partner or if you're married...
Yeah, I'm married.
You're married, and does he or she... Do they mind you? Not what you're dressing up as, but is this like, are they happy because they're not having to do the gardening?
My husband, bless him, I've actually got him involved in gardening.
In a tuxedo?
In a tuxedo, yeah. He loves gardening now. I mean, he gets excited when he sees the plants,
So you're sure of the plants that he's excited about?
He loves my glam side of gardening. He loves that I'm the glamorous gardener. I'm the glamour gardener. That's what I'm. I'm the glamour gardener.
And also, you do most of the heavy lifting, so he's happy with that.
And I do, yeah. I rock the mower and.
And what about the kids? Do you have kids? I
have 2 children. Yeah, my daughter's not really into gardening. She's 16. She's not so into gardening. But my son, bless him, who's 13, is starting to get into it now. He really enjoys it, and yeah, he's hopefully he'll be like me. Not glam.
Nothing wrong with being
He could be glam, but
He'd be
yeah.
a sort of David Bowie of young gardeners.
He could, but yeah, but it's just a fun, exciting hobby to take up, and I would love more people to get involved with it.
Well, I think your passion has absolutely come through. I'm sure more people will get into it, and hopefully they'll dress up accordingly. Lucy Nicole, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you, Josh. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Right, that's it for the first hour of the show, but plenty still to come, including Michael Schellenberger on his new free speech campaign, more questions from our lovely audience, and the man who charged car park visitors £10 to park like a Wally. Lots to get through. Look forward to having you with us. See you then. Thank you.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the People's Channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute? Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's at Drive Time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Mondays to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There'll be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
There's plenty more still to come on Free Speech Nation this week, and we have more questions coming up for our wonderful audience. But let's get a news update first from Ray Addison.
Cheers, Josh. Here's the latest from the GB newsroom. Our top story. The Met Police says it's aware of new footage showing Conservative staff partying during lockdown and joking about COVID restrictions, and they are considering it. Michael Gove, the Levelling Up Secretary, has apologised, describing the behaviour as unacceptable. In the footage obtained by the Mirror, Tory staff can be seen ignoring social distancing rules imposed by the government at the height of the pandemic. 2 of the 24 people at the Christmas party were later named in Boris Johnson's resignation honours list. Mr Gove told us that disciplinary action has already been taken.
The reason why those steps were taken was to
reduce the spread of the disease, in order to make sure that the pressures on the NHS were manageable, in order to make sure that we could treat people who were very ill. So again, the actions here are deeply distressing, and I can only apologise to people that individuals behaved in this way. My understanding is that there was an investigation into the party when the photograph emerged, and people were disciplined.
Well, MPs will debate any possible punishment for Boris Johnson tomorrow after he was found to have misled Parliament over Partygate. The Privileges Committee recommended that the former Prime Minister should face a 90-day suspension had he not already resigned in advance of that judgment. Now, it's understood that his supporters are being encouraged to abstain, but former Brexit Secretary David Davis told Camilla Tominey he will support the committee.
One of the things about Parliament is it's the highest court in the land.
Yeah.
That creates a problem when you're coming to privileges. What's that problem? It's like having a trial in a village. Everybody knows everybody.
Yeah.
Nobody is entirely unbiased.
How do they know his own mind at the time?
They don't have to. They don't, what they know is what he knows.
Yeah.
If you go to a party, you know it was a party. You don't need an advisor to tell you.
The death toll caused by flooding following the destruction of Ukraine's Kakhovka Dam has now risen to 45, with Moscow reporting 29 fatalities in Russian-held areas. The breaching of the dam in early June unleashed floodwaters across southern Ukraine, including areas occupied by Russian forces. It's destroyed land and cut off access to essential supplies. Kyiv says more than 3,600 people have been evacuated, while 31 are still missing. On TV, online, on DAB+ radio and on TuneIn 2, this is GB News. Back now to Josh and Free Speech Nation.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. A wonderful audience has joined us here tonight, so let's put them to work. Our next question is from Jeff.
Should a man always give up their seat for a pregnant woman?
So a man sparked a huge debate online this week after refusing to give up his seat for what he called an entitled pregnant woman who asked him to move. But the man claims that he had a good excuse. He'd taken a fold-up chair with him and camped out early to get front row seats for a relative's graduation ceremony. Now, Cressida, what do you think about this? Give me your seat.
You know, he brought the seat.
He bought the seat.
He brought the seat with him because he's got ill health and felt he couldn't stand.
Did he bring the fetus?
No, but why didn't she bring a seat? If she knew... If he hadn't been there, there wouldn't have been any seats.
I see. This is like some philosophical conundrum here. Which came first, the pregnant woman or the seat?
I don't understand. I mean, I've never been pregnant. People say you get baby brain, don't they? You'd be more of an expert on that than me. Do you think maybe she just got a little bit over-entitled...
I don't think entitled is the right word here. I think that there is definitely a misunderstanding, because from my understanding this, he also bought the seat because he has health issues himself, right, with his knees and his feet and just being a wimp.
Yeah, I think they should have just had an oppression off and find out who was the most oppressed in that moment. The one who was most oppressed by their own health and the patriarchy gets to take the seat.
You think that's what it always comes down to, the patriarchy with you?
Yeah, exactly, exactly.
But
so he should...
Do you know who I feel sorry for? Is her bloke. I don't know, husband, partner, whatever he is, because he was sent over to go and ask this chap for the seat twice. He kept getting sent back to the front line to go and argue her case, and he must have just been thinking...
What he should have done was just get down on his knees and just make a human chair for her.
Perfect.
Yes.
Josh,
he's the one who got her
good.
pregnant.
Brilliant.
Well, we don't know that, Josh.
Oh, you see, do you think he's rebelling against it?
Well, no, it might not be. Someone else might have got her pregnant.
Now, would you give up...
It's true.
You might know some more information. Always with the conspiracy theories, you. So, but, I mean, would you give up your seat even with health issues or not? For me, it's like, it just goes out as a no-brainer. I see a pregnant woman, I'm just like...
Yeah, you're just a great guy.
I'm a really good...
Hang on, he hasn't said which way yet.
Yeah.
No, of course I would give her my seat.
OK.
Even if she was my wife. What do you think? If you had to make a choice about who was in the wrong here, or would you give up the seat or not?
Would I give up the seat? It depends on my health issue, and it depends on who was watching. If it was just loads of angry women, I would give up my seat. If it was blokes who obviously don't care, I'd be like, no.
Really? You wouldn't want to set an example? I remember being sort of 10 years old and going on a school visit on the tube and saying, I remember saying, oh, would you like to sit here? I said this to this lady, and yeah, we've been told to give up our seats to old people. And she was probably 20. She looked deeply hurt by it. What do you think, Cresta? Was he in the wrong?
What was she going to do if there was no seat? This is what I don't understand. It's not a situation where you expect seats. She's gone to queue for the day. Maybe it's not...
Well, I don't know if that was what she was planning on the day out, but there was a seat there. I do understand what you're saying. Of course, the fact that this person bought the seat, she should have maybe planned ahead or whatever. But at the same time, we have a human being in need,
yes,
heavily pregnant. I know that takes...
It was her choice.
Maybe they should have played music, like musical chairs, and when they stopped it, just pile on.
Hey, that's a brilliant idea there. That would be quite funny to see as well. Right, our next question is from our email account, and it's from Anna. So an article published in the Times this week carried an interview with a famous chef who talked about kitchen culture in the 1990s. Now, chefs would often work 90 hours a week. And what this person has said is you can't only ever expect to do fun stuff. It's called work for a reason. So this raises the question, are employees today expecting too much in the workplace and whether work should ever be fun? What do you think there? I mean, we're having fun now. Is this work? We're just hanging out, a couple of friends, guys.
Yeah,
with our best friends in the audience here. Hey, dudes.
It is work, Josh, and we're making it look like work, if I'm being honest.
OK. Can you see the sweat? Am I getting a bit shiny up there?
Biggest laugh of the entire show, really. Sod you all. But look, the reality is you go to work, you have a dreadful time, you're surrounded by people you don't really like, under electronic lighting, you say things that you don't really mean, you don't get paid enough whilst doing so, you're deeply resentful, and then you go home and you take antidepressants.
Now, Cresta, apart from the fact that Francis has revealed that, unlike you, he's getting paid, what do you think? I mean, we're our day jobs or night jobs, we're comedians. We do it... It's certainly not the money. It's arguably it's the love of it, right?
It is the love of it.
It's the love of GB News.
Well, there's that as well. Yeah. I mean, peek behind the curtain. I've done a lot of admin in the last 10 years, and on the one hand, you're right. You're kept in the pen for 8 hours a day. It's very distressing. We used to have the rush hour before Coronavirus Festival. On the other hand, not a lot of work gets done in the office. I don't know if there's any other admins in the house. We didn't do a lot of work, so I don't know.
I was once on I covered someone's maternity when I was starting out as a comic, and I managed to see how long it would take me to literally not do any work, and it was 2 months. No one, and finally, one of the doctors. It was for the King's College. Hello, guys. Hey, King's College, and in the invoice department. And then finally, one of the pharmacists came up and said, "Oh, they're saying this invoice never went through." And I went, "Oh, let me just double check on that." And then I went into the office and I did about those 2 months of work, and it took me about half an hour to do it. So,
but it's still a great strain to spend the time there. So I do have some sympathy.
When you said that you didn't do any work, I just had this image of people dying in their beds. You weren't doing any of the admin necessary for it. And I was like, you're the person who brought down the NHS. People are saying it's the Tories, but really it was Josh Howie all along.
I think you might have a point. I hadn't actually considered that. No, I think it was just experiments. I remember there was some sort of bill that came in.
Just some cancer experiments.
No, it was stuff for bat viruses. I'm sure it wasn't important. Anyway, another email question next from Simon. Is China trying to outlaw comedy? Comedy is no laughing matter in China, where stand-up comedian Li Haoshi, known by his stage name House, was recently slapped with a fine for telling a joke that didn't go down well with the ruling Communist Party. Fans say it's part of a cultural squeeze on the art sector, with observers warning of possible excessive use of power. Now, Francis, this is dangerous. They come for the clowns. We have a role.
Yes,
I know there is an argument that comedy is how society releases its tensions. When the government is coming for the people who are speaking out for the dissent, is that a sign of just how far things have got in terms of shutting down debate?
Well, absolutely. I mean, the Chinese Communist Party, let's be fair, have never been known for their sense of humour. No one looks at Xi Jinping and goes, you know what, that's a bloke who loves banter.
Yeah.
To the point is, one of his nicknames is Winnie the Pooh, right? Because people say that he looks like Winnie the Pooh. and he's actually banned Winnie the Pooh memes and GIFs on Weibo.
Wow.
So you can't even use it because he's that sensitive.
Yeah, but now it's even funnier. So
Yeah.
now when we do, there'll be some other form of Winnie the Pooh that goes undetected for a while. I think that's hilarious. And isn't it a shame when somebody's that funny and they can't see it themselves?
I know, I'd love to be inspired, the Winnie Pooh connection. But this is, first of all, I was actually a little bit shocked to find there even, and this is probably terribly biased of me, that there was that level of comedy in China. I sort of see it as part of the thinking of it as a totalitarian society would be that they don't really have these stand-up comics, because part of being a stand-up comic is that you should be able to tell the truth, be a truth teller. That's it. Although I would argue that our industry, and that you're looking short because you're rightly so. I would say that our industry has massively failed over the last 10 years to call the emperor's new clothes and whatnot, and various different arguments.
Yeah.
But it is interesting to see that this is the first. Do you think this is going to take it further into another sort of cultural revolution?
Well, I think they're quite keen on that, aren't they, at the moment? He's trying to push Chinese traditional culture, whatever that is. So, yeah, if I was a comic, I think I'd hang up my microphone and go home at this point. It was terrifying.
Well, that's a shame, because I had a present to announce to you, a tour in China coming up.
Well, I was thinking, could we take Comedy Unleashed to China next? I don't know, that would be quite
And never come home. Yes.
Yeah.
So, still to come on Free Speech Nation, we'll be talking to journalist and famous free speech advocate Michael Schellenberger. He is launching the Global Free Speech Alliance this week. See you in a couple of minutes.
Like all families, we have arguments every now and then, but actually we agree on what the mission of GB News is, and that's the most fundamentally important thing.
GB News provides the kind of platform that lets all voices be heard. We don't hold back. We're free to say what we really think.
Just because some people who live in a tiny little Westminster bubble think that their particular story is important, that's not the most important story for me.
And often they will be difficult stories that you won't find on the establishment media.
Because what people think in the north of England may be very different to what they're thinking in the home counties.
We're going to carry on telling the world what life is really like for households up and down the UK.
We love to be in your car, in your kitchen as you're having your breakfast. Whatever you're doing, you are part of the show. If it matters to you, it matters to us.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Patrick Christie's, Monday to Friday, 3 till 6. We tackle the day's news agenda like you've never seen before. It's high tempo, high octane, the most controversial topics and the best guests. You will not be able to take your eyes and ears off it. I'm not afraid to ask the questions that you really want answered. 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Join me, Camilla Tominey, on Sunday mornings from 9:30, taking the politicians to task and breaking out of SW1 to see how their decisions are affecting you across the UK. Bursting the Westminster bubble every Sunday morning, only on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain's watching.
Join us every night on GB News at 11 p.m. for Headliners, which is 3 top comedians going through the next day's news stories, which is exactly what you need, because when the establishment has gone crazy, you need some craziness to make sense of it. So join us 11 p.m. every night on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Hi, I'm Dan Wootton. You can watch me live on GB News Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. And did you know that you can also watch and listen live on our website, gbnews.com. You'll always be up to date on the latest breaking news, as well as enjoying the best stories, opinions and shows. You can even join the debate under our live player as you're watching. So head straight to gbnews.com on TV, radio and online. GB News, Britain's news channel.
So Jubes and Kerr, we tackle the issues of the day with real robust debate, both sides of the fence, battling it out with me in the middle with my forthright opinions and views. And often really interesting things happen because you start with a position and then by the end of the debate you find actually, well, I might not have thought about that one.
What we need in this country is 2 new political parties.
You should maybe think about doing a 2024 calendar. I'm Michelle Dewberry and I'm keeping you company right through until 7 o'clock this evening.
GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's watching.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. My next guest tonight is American free speech crusader who says governments around the world are making bold attempts to take away our civil liberties. Michael Schellenberger is in town for an event on Thursday night in London when himself, Russell Brand and Matt Taibbi will be exposing what they describe as censorship industrial complex as they launch the Global Free Speech Alliance. Welcome to the show, Michael. Thank you. Wow. An honour. Pleasure. You're here. So please tell us about this Free Speech Alliance.
Well, I think it's important for people to understand that what's been revealed in Britain has also been happening in the United States, which is government bureaucrats putting pressure on social media companies to censor disfavored voices, disfavored opinions, most dramatically around COVID. We saw Facebook and Twitter censoring what they themselves acknowledged were often true stories of vaccine side effects. And this is shocking for anybody, whether you're liberal or conservative. We spent a lot of effort over the years trying to require pharmaceutical companies to disclose the side effects of their drugs. So when you have ordinary people describing the side effects of vaccines, I think we should all agree that that should be permitted speech. But it gets much worse than that. We've seen the involvement of our intelligence services, our security forces, people that George Orwell warned us should not be involved in censoring speech. And we're seeing it in the United States, in Britain. The EU is making an attempt to censor speech. Maybe the worst is happening in Ireland, where the government wants the right to be able to go into your home and search your phones and computers without your permission and deem you guilty before being proven innocent. So there's Brazil, we see it. We see it all the English-speaking countries of the world starting to crack down on free speech. We felt like we needed to strike back, and that's why we're having this event on Thursday, 7 p.m., Central Hall, Westminster. Here in London, I think we have so much in common, our two countries, and we want to bring us together on this.
Well, and look at that, just instantly sold out like that.
Let's hope so.
I'm sure. But I think it's interesting that this, and I should point out that I think it's a little bit more so in America, maybe, where this free speech seems to be like a right-left issue as such. But it's definitely these different discussions about COVID, about gender identity, about how our policing, they transcend left and right. Surely.
I mean, they should. I mean, the year I graduated from high school, 1989, our Supreme Court said that you had a right to burn the American flag. And it was mostly conservatives and Republicans who were opposed to that. As a boy growing up, my father would talk about how the ACLU, which is our main civil rights organization, fought for the right of neo-Nazis to be able to march through a predominantly not only Jewish neighborhood, but a neighborhood of Holocaust survivors. And that was allowed because America has such a muscular view of free speech. We made it our First Amendment to the Constitution. It was central to what it meant to be an American. And so to see the issue become polarized in this way, it's very sad, it's very troubling, it makes me upset. And so we definitely are trying to appeal to everybody, no matter where you sit on that left-right spectrum.
And how come you've come to the UK? I mean, is it a worse problem here, or do you think that the fight back is a little bit more developed here?
I mean, on the one hand, Britain is where we got our appreciation of freedom of speech.
You're welcome.
And now we're coming back, and we, of course, like many things in the United States, we took it to a new extreme, and we said, look, there's very few limitations that we put on free speech in the United States. You can't lie to commit fraud, and you can't incite violence against people using your speech. But beyond that, our Supreme Court has upheld very strong free speech rights. And our view is that instead of the pressure that is being put on social media companies, based mostly in the United States, from Europe, from Britain, from countries around the world, for us to water down our own free speech rights, we think other countries should strengthen their commitment to free speech. We think other countries, we should, and we want to help that happen because we don't want to be on the defensive. This week is about us going on the offensive and strengthening free speech, because we think when citizens around the world have a chance to have stronger or weaker free speech laws, they're going to choose stronger laws.
And how did you, well, here's a picture of the guys there. How did you hook up with Matt and Russell then?
I mean, Russell Brand's a huge character in the United States, and we really fell in love with him through the...
He's very demure here.
Yeah, sure. We all fell in love with Russell Brand over the last decade. Matt Taibbi, I also only recently met. Matt and I both came from the left. We find ourselves a little bewildered to be in this position of being interrogated by Democrats in Congress. Russell Brand is somebody that I don't share all of his views. He has views that I don't necessarily share on things like agriculture or nuclear power and various issues, but I think we all agree that particularly when you've experienced censorship or when you watch him on his YouTube channel have to talk around the restrictions that they're now imposing. We see now YouTube is imposing even stronger restrictions, even cracking down on very famous people like Jordan Peterson and Ben Shapiro, others for using the wrong pronouns. So we're seeing a simultaneous crackdown around the world. It's affecting all of us. Even if you don't agree on other issues, I think this is something, freedom of speech is something that's traditionally united us. We recognize that we don't agree, but that we're better off being able to have the conversation rather than be in fear that the government's going to put us in prison for the things that we say and believe.
And arguably, it's not just the government. I mean, we are talking about social movements as well, and the virulence with which they attack anybody with a different opinion. Say, as you say, coming from the left, I'm sure you'll find that some of the most, egregious, really people taking it to the furthest possible way are people also from the left, where it enters into fascism, of course.
Yeah, of course. I mean, this is a very sad development over the last 20 years in particular. You know, we made these incredible achievements in terms of civil rights and women's rights and rights for gays and lesbians. And then it just went to this incredible extreme. And so the censorship industrial complex is sort of the inorganic government imposition, but it pulls its strength from cancel culture, from this really dogmatic woke culture. It's not to say it's entirely left-right. We've seen censorship of anti-war left-wing voices as well. There's a group of black radicals that are being prosecuted by the FBI in the United States for speaking out against the war in Ukraine. So again, it shouldn't break along left-right lines. That has tended to be where it's been, but really it's this desire from the grassroots. It's like the last segment you saw on Elizabeth Gilbert. The self-censorship and the cancel culture then has given power to these government agencies to tap into that and use it as an excuse to demand more censorship, including things that they mislabel hate speech that really aren't hateful at all.
So you mentioned social media a few times. It seems like that may be the problem and the solution. I mean, you had Elon Musk buying Twitter. Has it made a big difference, do you think, him taking that, just even in the practical sense on Twitter, but also what he's standing up for?
A huge difference. I mean, the first thing that he did when he took over the company is he invited in several journalists. I was brought in through a friend who he had brought in to look in through the Twitter files. And what we discovered really shocked us. I mean, at first it was sort of this imposition of very dogmatic values, but over time we started to see people from the FBI and the Department of Homeland Security and even the CIA making requests for content moderation or censorship, often along lines that were designed to divide us. I mean, I think people have to remember, when you look at the sweep of history, we are more tolerant of racial, religious, and sexual minorities in Britain, the United States, the Western world than we've ever been. I mean, just think about your parents or grandparents 100 years ago, how much less tolerance there was. So to see the Secretary General of the United Nations or the President of the European Commission or other major figures get up there and say that we're suffering from this increase of hatred in the society, it's just false. And in fact, they're the ones that are stoking, I believe, this animus and this hatred of each other on ideological lines as a justification for expanding censorship.
Well, obviously, this is a huge topic. I mean, we've got a whole show dedicated to it, but good luck. Do you want to tell us one more time on Thursday? Just get out there for people who are interested, who want to hear more.
Absolutely. So it's Central Hall, Westminster, 7 p.m. If you can't afford a ticket, I'll personally pay for your ticket. We've got to get a strong show of force there. Will you buy me a coffee as well? Absolutely. We need a strong show of force. It's really, I think the alliance has to start with the United States and Britain, and I think the rest of the Western world, but also Brazil, so we can start to fight back and go on the offense for free speech.
Absolutely. Well, thank you so much for coming in and telling us about it, and good luck on Thursday. Very nice to meet you.
Thanks so much for having me.
Still to come on Free Speech Nation, the latest on the anti-protest legislation being pushed through Parliament. I'll be joined by Baroness Claire Fox for that, plus my thoughts on Father's Day. Thanks, mate. That was amazing. Really nice to meet you.
Thank you so much.
And good luck. Yes, good.
I joined GB News because I was sick and tired of not hearing my views being represented, not just mine, but so many people that I knew and spoke to.
I just couldn't get my voice out there. I couldn't say anything. I couldn't do anything. Whatever the narrative was, I kind of had to follow it.
GB News is there to provide a voice for those who have been ignored by the establishment media. We think different things, we've got a different style.
GB News is here to be optimistic and positive about the future.
It's real kind of dynamic and flowing, with the audience very much at the heart of it, like a big family.
Here at GB News, we talk about the things that matter to you.
Hearing the voices from right across our towns and cities, especially our towns.
All sides of the argument represented with a heavy dose of opinion.
We're on a mission here to make a difference.
And the GB News family really is here for you, and whatever time of day you can watch or listen.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
We're proud to be GB News,
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
Monday to Thursday, 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. Join me, Dan Wootton. I'll bring you the sharpest takes and hottest debates.
Do you not believe in prisons?
I don't believe in prisons.
I'm completely stunned.
I guarantee you there'll be no spin, no bias, no censorship.
I actually was personally quite offended by it.
And no reason to go to bed.
So I guess they've always been quite woke.
That's Dan Wootton tonight on TV, radio and online. Monday to Thursday from 9 p.m. till 11 p.m. on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
You've probably seen politicians interviewed 1,000 times, but we do it differently. We find out who they really are, we don't shout, we chat, and hopefully we bring a bit of light, not just heat. Did you know Kate Moss?
Apparently.
Do you have a pair of jeans or a pair of jeans?
No, of course I don't. What would I do with them?
My friends are like, oh my God, what's she doing now?
Join me every Sunday at 6 for Gloria Meets, only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Weeknights on GB News from 6 p.m. You'll always get drama.
Please stop, Michelle.
I know, yeah.
Please stop.
Should I just shut off?
Romance.
You like me, I like you. There you go.
There you are. Well, don't tell anybody.
Adventure.
Etc.
That's the whole point.
And action.
Sergeant, read my superstar panel that are already at it. They're fighting. It's going to be quite a show.
Only on GB News. Britain's watching.
In a world of dull and predictable radio and TV shows.
Oh, hi. On Mark Dolan tonight, we've got big guests. We drill into the big stories of the day. The show adds up to a brilliant listening and viewing experience. Mark Dolan Tonight is the most entertaining current affairs show ever, and that's a fact. That's Mark Dolan Tonight, Fridays from 8, Saturday and Sunday from 9. Only on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. Happy Father's Day. Now, I love Father's Day, not just for the extra half hour sleep in I get until 7 a.m, and not just because I have 5 kids, 4 boys and a girl, and I love seeing the creativity and thought that they put into the cards they've made, whilst doing my best not to point out any spelling mistakes. I love Father's Day because it's one of the few, if not only the only, means left that we can celebrate masculinity without shame. It's a public holiday in Lithuania, Estonia, Samoa and South Korea. Catholics have been observing it as St. Joseph's Day since the Middle Ages. In France, it was started by a lighter manufacturer in the 1950s to sell their lighters. I'm not sure if their Mother's Day was started by a vodka brand. And in Britain, we celebrate by going on Wikipedia and learning loads about facts about Father's Day. Well, it might just be me. What I do know, though, is that today is the one day I'm not beleaguered by the sense that there's something innately wrong with being who I am, a man. Maybe beleaguered is a strong word. We do like to exaggerate. Hey, women! But we're living in a moment in the West where toxic masculinity has become so synonymous to masculinity, it's unnecessary using the prefix anymore. And if you do want to say something pro-men, then there's this implication you must be suspect, an apologist for sexual violence, a misogynist, an angry incel in a basement, unless you're a hippie men's group leader looking to talk about your emotions. To talk up positive attributes of masculinity is to somehow be in opposition to femininity rather than to complement it. And when someone like Jordan Peterson comes along, when he calmly articulates the problem that half our population is growing up constantly bombarded with the message to be ashamed of who they are, censorship, ridicule, slander are deployed to shut him down. And obviously, I'm not him, I'm not an intellectual, I'm not Andrew Doyle. I'd get lost in a maze of appraisal of how we got to this point. And my arguments would die the death of 1,000 caveats. Factoring in choices to not procreate, infertility, same-sex parents, other expressions of maleness, yet still what I'm not willing to do is cede the point that those many valid and diverse aspects to our society have themselves come to solely represent our society. I'm a father, and I can clearly see for myself how masculinity is in crisis, how bad faith actors like Andrew Tate have stepped in to stake a claim on our teenagers. I've seen it with my eldest son and his friends. Tate is providing them with something they're not getting elsewhere: pride, direction. But it's warped pride, warped direction. It's self-serving, destructive nonsense. I want my sons to be happy, professional contributors to society, hopefully making the world a better place rather than exploiting others. I want them to be in healthy relationships, helping raise a family of their own. I want them to be fathers. I want my daughter to have all of that also, and if it's in her path, be with someone who also wants to be a father. Personally, I'd never thought about being a dad, and certainly having 5 kids wasn't the plan. But it's easily the best thing I've ever done. I'm not perfect, I get impatient, occasionally a bit shouty, don't set a good example with my phone use, but it's how I've learned to nurture, to develop empathy, care for other people's needs, support, give, contain, provide security. Fatherhood is what has taught me how to be a man. Every study shows that absent fathers contribute to poorer outcomes in behavioural problems, emotional problems, cognitive development, mental health. Boys are more likely to be aggressive, impulsive and quick to anger. Girls have accelerated sexual development. Men are more than sperm. Men are needed. There's an idea that getting men to commit and emotionally and economically support their family was one of the greatest achievements of civilization. I'd argue that it might even define it. So let's acknowledge that and celebrate it, and let's make it something for our children to aspire to. Happy Father's Day. The irony is, of course, I spent the whole day writing that instead of sending it with my kids. Francis, is your father alive? Did you send him a message today?
First of all, I'd say that is a disgusting advert for the patriarchy, which I neither agree with nor support. No, I took my dad for a Turkish today, mate.
Lovely.
That's how you do it.
We're talking about the meal.
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, fine,
yeah. I didn't go to Istanbul and get my hair transplant.
Get him some nice teeth.
Yeah, exactly. Well, you know, Mum's getting old now. Time for an upgrade.
And do you appreciate that? Do you get a sense of who he was as a father, that you still have this relationship together?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, we had because Mum's disabled, Dad's a full-time carer, so by taking him out, it means that he gets a break. We can sit down and we can get some food. And the Turkish restaurant he goes to is really nice. One of the lovely things about Turkish culture is, like a lot of Mediterranean cultures, is that they really value family, in particular old people. And I think that's something that we've lost in this culture. So they actually look after Mum, they look after Dad, they make a bit of a fuss of them. And it was a really nice time.
It's lovely. And Cressida, what about yourself? You speak to your dad today?
Yeah, I spoke to Mike today.
Oh, call him Mike?
No. It amuses me to think of him like that. Yeah, I agree with every word. Very good monologue, Josh. I'm reading Warren Farrell's The Boy Crisis at the moment. Have you come across this? It's essential reading. Yeah, guys are in trouble and we need men, is my view.
Yeah, well, reluctantly, I've had to step up to the plate. What a nightmare. Moving on now. Amnesty International says the UK government is seeking to force rejected elements of the Public Order Act through the House of Lords. The proposed new regulations set the criminal threshold for protest an extremely low level. Amnesty boss Sasha Deshmukh said peaceful protest is very clearly protected under international rights law, yet the UK has entered a dangerous new era of authoritarian lawmaking, which is undermining our collective right to free speech and public assembly. To tell us more, I am joined by Baroness Claire Fox. Hello. There she is. Hello, Baroness. How are you?
Hello. Hi, Josh. So I think that Amnesty is slightly overstating it. The Public Order Act, as it is now, is indeed draconian and is worrying in terms of what it's got on the statute books. But I think that what might be a bit more challenging for us to consider is, firstly, that the recent row in the House of Lords was that there was an attempt to if you want, overturning what had been decided in the House of Commons in the unelected House of Lords, and that's a bit dodgy to start off, anti-democratic. And secondly, my big argument is that actually the problem is one of policing, not of legislation. That what's happened is that there is plenty of present public order legislation that could be used that isn't used by the police, and the government's only solution to this is to bring in more laws, and that doesn't solve the problem at all.
Well, a cynical person would say that this is they're using this opportunity to bring back this bill that they didn't get through previously, right?
Yeah. So they cheated, right? They kind of brought in a part of the bill at the House of Lords, it got overturned, and then they kind of brought it in via a secondary legislation thing called a statutory instrument. That's true. That was wrong, but they have to own that. The House of Lords can't then just act as an opposition house. I mean, who the hell are the House of Lords, right? We're just appointed there. And it's meant to scrutinise the law. You can shout at the government, but you can't just start overturning what the House of Commons said. In other words, two mistakes don't make a right. But the other thing I think we've all got to recognise, I mean, I was fascinating interview, by the way, with Michael Schellenberger there about free speech and the event that he's got on and so on. But when we talk about the right to protest, we all think we know what we're talking about. But one of the reasons why the Conservative government has got away with this law, this public order, clampdown, is because the particular tactics of Just Stop Oil, and they refer to them throughout this whole debate, has been less of the demonstrating in support of, the right to protest, really seriously using protest to go out and persuade the members of the public to support a cause, but has been explicitly set up by Just Stop Oil and Extinction Rebellion types to say we are going to annoy and get in the way of members of the British public because they won't listen to us, they won't vote the right way when it comes to climate change, and so we're going to disrupt their lives and bully them into submission. And I do think that, and I can understand this, that people just in the end have said, for God's sake, sort this out. This isn't a way of protesting. This is actually a way of undermining democracy. But what we saw, as the government then says, we've got to act, we've got to bring in this really draconian thing that we can arrest anyone. And they said, because something extraordinary has happened. And when we found out what the extraordinary thing was, it was that people walked slowly down a road. Right? Now, as it happens, there's plenty of laws that would mean that the police could have gone in and swooped up those people who have been irritating the life out of anyone who's trying to get to work. And we've seen the police are very quick to act when some member of the public intervenes. They just go and arrest them, but they won't do anything about these slow walkers. So they didn't need to bring in the extra law. That's worrying. But I still think that the bigger problems are the problem of policing and the problem of people using the right to protest, I'm afraid, to undermine democratic discussion on things like net zero and climate change.
But, Labour, I understand, has got quite a bit of stick for their what's called a regret motion. Could you just quickly explain what that is, and I believe you're backing it?
Yes, so this has all just happened last week, actually. So Baroness Jenny Jones from the Green Party had brought in what's known as a fatal motion, which would have struck down what had been implemented by the elected government. And the Labour Party, I think in this instance, made the correct call of saying you can't use a fatal motion, which is usually only used in very, 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 very extreme cases. And they said what that will do is it undermines the elected House of Commons, and it is not the place of the Lords to do that. Now, look, the Labour Party might have just been a bit anxious about upsetting people who are really fed up with the climate change activists, throwing paint over paintings and disrupting people's lives. It doesn't matter. They had a perfectly principled position, which I supported, which was to just say the House of Lords is not the place where you overturn the elected Commons. And we might not like what happens in the House of Commons. God knows I don't like it. But on the other hand, they are elected, the House of Lords are not. And so its job is to scrutinise, not to start acting as an opposition to the government. That would be completely wrong.
Well, I saw your speech and you were talking about how you didn't want to imitate the government's bad behaviour with what you see as more unconstitutional bad behaviour. And I do understand your point that it's not necessarily your job to step in to stop the representatives, of the public. But at the same time, isn't the purpose of the Lords to provide those checks and balances to the government of the day?
Yeah, but checks and balances is not the same as having a completely different policy. So at the moment, just to use an example, the illegal migration bill is going through the Lords, and I don't actually like a lot of that piece of legislation, but it would be completely wrong to say that the House of Lords is behaving responsibly on this, because rather than them scrutinising and acting as checks and balances, there's basically been an explicit attempt at saying we're going to gut this bill of any meaning and we're not going to let it happen. Now, you know, that's completely, you can't do that, right? Because I might not like the Rwanda plans. I might not think that that's the way to deal with it. But nonetheless, there's undoubtedly a mandate from the government to deal with the small boats. And so pointing out things that are, you know, difficult with a bill, which is what the Lord is meant to do, where he says, do you realise the unintended consequences of this? Making speeches pointing out why you disagree with it is one thing. But to actually block the House of Commons, we saw this, of course, with Brexit. The House of Lords were very keen to stop Brexit because they're not attacking the House of Commons, they're attacking the electorate, because the electorate are the ones who hold the House of Commons to account, not the House of Lords. The House of Lords has got a much more modest role. And I think it's got carried away with itself, to be honest. And a lot of people say, oh, well, we don't trust the public to vote the right way, so we have to rely on the House of Lords to overturn what we don't like in the Commons. And that's a very dangerous road to go down.
Well, thank you so much for explaining all of that to us. I feel much more informed. Very nice to see you again. Ladies and gentlemen, please, Baroness Claire Fox. Still to come, social sensations, unfiltered dilemmas, and then the man who charges people a tenner to park like Wally's. See you then. Now we look like we're having fun.
First and foremost, I am a GB News fan, and I was before I was working here. Just love the fact that we're asking the questions that a lot of establishment media won't ask.
With a bit of a twist, we not only want to inform you, but we want to keep you entertained.
It's worth the drive because you get in and the team's all ready and waiting, they're itching to go, and it's a proper little family.
GB News is the people's channel.
It's the audience that makes the programme sing.
We're giving our viewers and our listeners a voice. I see the thousands of your letters, tweets, emails, you name it, coming in.
Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it?
The establishment had their chance. Now we're here to represent you.
It's time for something different. It's time for GB News. I'm very patriotic. I believe in Britain. Our best days lie ahead.
Britain's watching.
Britain's watching.
Join us here on GB News.
The People's Channel.
Britain's news channel.
I'm Andrew Doyle. Join me at 7 o'clock every Sunday night for Free Speech Nation, the show where I tackle the week's biggest stories in politics and current affairs with the help of my two comedian panellists and a variety of special guests.
Free Speech Nation, Sunday nights from 7 on GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Nightmare commute. Kick it up a gear with me, Patrick Christie's, at drive time, 3 till 6 p.m, Monday to Friday on GB News Radio. You can listen online and on DAB+, on the smart speaker app, and on the GB News app. And if you've got an Alexa, all you have to say is, Alexa, play GB News. We're also on TuneIn and the Radio Player apps. From the school run to rush hour, get revved up with me, Patrick Christie's, on GB News and GB News Radio.
What you get for breakfast is something that, if we do our jobs right, you will wake up to news that you didn't know the night before.
It's a conversation. It's not just me and Eamon.
We want to get to know you, and we want you to get to know us.
From 6, it's Breakfast with Eamon and Isabel.
Monday to Thursdays on GB News.
Britain's news channel.
Westminster is going around in ever-decreasing circles, followed by the media. Britain is broken. How on earth did we get into this mess? But more importantly, how do we get out of it? Join me at 7 p.m, Monday to Thursdays on Farage, here on GB News. We will have open, rational debate. We've got to work out how Britain moves forward from this. Join us here on GB News, the People's Channel. Britain is watching.
Every Sunday from 11, join Michael Portillo.
There will be topical discussion, looking at the week before and the week to come. So kick back and relax at 11 a.m. on Sundays on GB News with me, Michael Portillo. GB News, the People's Channel, Britain's news channel.
Welcome back to Free Speech Nation. A farmer went viral this week for allowing customers to park on his land like a wally for a tenner. Ian Flindle's farm is located at the start of a public footpath leading to a local beauty spot in Cornwall. He asked for cash to park for the day through an honesty box, but it's his sign that caught the eye of local visitors. Let's take a look. So for those listening on radio, it says, parking neat and tight for £3, parking like a wally, £10. I'm delighted to say Ian Flindle joins me now. Oh, there he is. We had some graphics. Hello, Ian. There we are. Let's have a little round of applause. Ian, what was the inspiration for the sign?
Well, let me first say we're very happy to see visitors come to visit our wonderful countryside here and, of course, our little shop at the farm. And originally, I just wanted a sign to tell people what to put in the honesty box in our little car park, which I should say has no lines on it. It's just a field. So I called in our local sign writer, Squirrel, his name is. And Squirrel's got signs all over West Penwith.
Is this Cornwall?
And I said to Squirrel, in Cornwall, yeah. I said to Squirrel, we just need a sign to tell people what to put in the box. £3 is what we're thinking of charging. But actually, I really wish for another sign that charged people parking like wallies rather more, £10. I didn't really think he was going to do it, but 2 days later he came back with a sign with both messages on, and that's the one you just read out.
I see. Well, look, I've got about 20 questions to get through, so I don't know if we're going to get through all of them. I mean, what's the reaction been like to the sign then? Well,
Parking is a good deal neater and tighter than it ever was, and we now get considerate parking, which means that more people can get to see the countryside.
So you're not getting millionaires arriving and just being like, yeah, this is my opportunity to do some crazy parking.
People do linger at the sign, I think, rather surprised. And I'm beginning to think our sign is rather more popular now than the one at Land's End. And indeed, we seem to have people coming now just to take pictures of the sign.
And pay £3.
And pay sometimes £10. There are a number of £10 go in the box. Quite surprising.
Wow. OK, I mean, of course, it does cut down on the profits if you run out of space, I guess, from bad parking. But do you think this will catch on elsewhere?
It's not so much the profits, because we're just covering the cost of doing it, really. It's the fact that if people come to a car park with cars all over it, you can't get in. And people find themselves turning around and going somewhere else.
That's it. So it's a shame. So it's more of it's done as a sort of tongue-in-cheek deterrent, but it might egg people on.
Yeah. It was purely by chance, really, but the humour seemed to work. I need one now for the people that leave poo bags.
OK, what is it? £3 for animal faeces and £10 for human. Anyway, so... There we go. Ian Flindle, thank you very much for joining us from Free Speech Nation. OK, it's time now for Social Sensations, the part of the show we devote to the weird and wonderful world of social media. Let's start with this recording, which purports to be of a teacher at Rye College arguing with kids who question why someone might identify as a cat.
But gender there is a link between it, and you're saying that people can't change
No, they
who they want to
can't.
be.
They can't. Unless you get a penis attached. No, I'm not.
You're confusing sex and gender.
No, I'm not though, because if you have a vagina, you're a girl. If you have a penis, you're a boy.
Yeah, you can't have a vagina and be a girl, but then
unless you get separate, even then, because you've got those genes.
How you identity. How you identify.
Yeah,
it's not an opinion that we express in this school.
Yes, it is.
No, it's not. And if you don't like it, you need to go to a different school.
This is actually shocking stuff. I couldn't believe when I first saw that video. I remember just like, you hear that this is what's going in our schools, but to hear it like that is unbelievable, right? This is the teacher.
So presumably the child's got a phone and they thought, I'm going to record this so that we all know what's going on.
Yeah.
Yeah, amazing.
Yeah. Absolutely. And this is because they basically said that identifying as a cat is ridiculous. And
It's
there's
really
teachers, they say
interesting.
you have to respect that, whatever that means.
Yeah, so now the rebellious thing is to not believe that.
It seems, well, that is exactly what seems to genuinely be going on. But this idea, Francis, that these young women are going to be reported to a teacher, and if you hear the full tape, they're saying how they're going to have to write stuff up about this and whatever. Yeah. And also to hear the teacher say, no, there are actually 3 sexes. This is a teacher.
No debate. If you don't like it, you can get...
Yeah.
Shouldn't we be having some discussion here? I mean, I would want my kids to learn the art of discussion and negotiation, not being told you're wrong. Get out.
Absolutely. Respect to these young women, though, surely. I mean, they really stood their ground, right?
Well, absolutely. I mean, as a former teacher and someone who taught for around 13 years, I just look back with nostalgia at the days when you just got a chair thrown at your head instead of a debate about gender ideology. Do you know, let kids be kids. Just let them viciously assault a teacher, have sex with each other in the back of the classrooms. We all knew where we stood in the 90s.
Well, what a great guy you were for your...
I was one of the best, mate. Not my words, Ofsted's.
Shame you got... Oh, what a shame you got kicked out. Now, next up is this video, which isn't the best advert for people in their 60s learning to drive. Wow. OK, so this video emerged with a 63-year-old's driving test in Argentina. Cresta, did she fail her test, do you think?
I should think so. She'd have to be very, very pretty to still pass on that one, I think. So there's an examiner in the car with that person? That's
Not anymore.
Not
They died.
Oh, man. I mean, we've all accidentally pressed the wrong pedal, haven't we?
Not maybe that hard.
No. It's nightmare.
So, what do you think about... you know, there's a thing about people in their 90s who might need to redo their test. Do you agree with that?
Well, yeah, number one, it's in their 70s, and yes, I do agree with that. And as someone who has got a Latin American mother, that's what they do, mate.
Is that what it is?
Yeah, I mean, if anything, that's exemplary driving from some of that lot.
Was she trying to get your father, maybe?
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, because he's off to Turkey to get the hair transplant.
Now the part where we're going to... Oh, God, we'll just see it one more time. Oh, my God. That is truly terrifying. Wow, OK. Now we're going to get to the part where we talk through your unfiltered dilemmas. Our first dilemma is from Joe in Reel. I pay a local old lady to come round and clean each week, but she's rubbish. Absolutely rubbish, but she's also old. How do I bin her off without it looking like I'm picking on someone wrinkly?
Send them a text. They won't be able to read it, and that's the easiest way to get rid of them.
Well, what about you, Krista?
Wow, what a position of privilege. We hear about privilege a lot, don't we? But the dilemma being, is my cleaner good enough?
Yeah, I know, this is slightly...
Fantastic.
It's my old, disgusting, wrinkled cleaner. It's crazy.
God, I don't know. Maybe do some cleaning yourself.
You don't have a cleaner. I'm assuming you don't have a cleaner.
Have a cleaner.
Do you have a cleaner?
Of course I do, mate.
Do you?
Yeah.
What? OK, I don't have a cleaner
Got
at
over
all.
500,000 on YouTube, mate.
Oh, wow, it's like that. Very good. Well, I don't have a cleaner. We eventually... and we do that thing where we tidy up the flat before the cleaner would have... We had a cleaner about 6 months, and then we would just spend the day before cleaning up the flat and then feeling guilty.
It still worked then. I think we should
you're right,
harness
actually.
the power of shame in society. That's a great example.
That's it, just inviting people around. That's why I don't like anybody ever coming over to our home. It makes everything far too tidy. Very good. Right, well, thank you so much for joining us for Free Speech Nation. This was the week when P.G. Wodehouse books were ruled outdated, and a man found people were willing to pay £10 to park like Wally's. Thank you very much to my panel, Cresta Wetton, and Francis Foster, and to all of my guests this evening. Thank you very much, guys. And if you want to join us live in the studio and be part of our wonderful audience, you just go to sroaudiences.com. Stay tuned for the brilliant Mark Dolan tonight. That's Lex. And don't forget, Headliners on every night at 11 p.m. Thank you for watching Free Speech Nation. Goodbye.
Hello there, I'm Jonathan Vaughtry here with your GB News weather forecast provided by the Met Office. Some of us may have seen some lightning strikes and heard a few rumbles of thunder to end Sunday. It's all due to this area of low pressure that is sat just to the west of the UK, but it's bringing unsettled conditions across many areas, and we will continue to see some of those thunderstorms track northwards as we head throughout the rest of Sunday evening. Increasingly though into the overnight period, it's less the thunder and more this band of heavy rain that becomes our issue. Tracking across northern England into Scotland, again some heavy rain, around half a month's worth of rainfall for some areas could cause some surface